All right, so get ready, because today we're diving deep into a world where charisma and controversy, well, they kind of collide.
Seems intense.
Oh, it is. Today on Grifter or Gifted, we're tackling the enigma that is Dr. Sherri Tenpenny,
Ah, yes, Dr. Tenpenny.
an osteopathic physician who's, well, she's become a lightning rod.
Really?
Oh, yeah, in the world of vaccines, especially when it comes to COVID-19.
Makes sense. A lot of controversy there.
We're talking about some claims that would make even, I think, even the most hardcore skeptic raise an eyebrow.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Like,
Think vaccines can magnetize people?
magnetize. Come on.
She said it.
Real.
5G and vaccines are connected. Yep, she's gone there too.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
so is she a fearless truth teller?
Challenging the system. Or a master manipulator preying on fear. That's what we're here to figure out.
That's the question, isn't it? Grifter or gifted?
Let's unpack this. What's really
Yeah.
interesting is that Tenpenny's anti-vaccine activism, it didn't just like emerge with COVID-19.
Oh, so this isn't a new thing for her.
No, not at all. She's been on this path for a very long time. We can actually trace her activities back to at least 2015.
2015, wow.
There was a speaking tour in Australia that was canceled because of public outcry against her views.
Oh, wow. So she's been a controversial figure for quite a while then.
Yeah, so she wasn't, some flash in the pan riding the wave of pandemic anxiety.
I see. So this was a deeply ingrained stance for her, even back then.
Exactly. And I think it's crucial to understand that her anti-vaccine perspective, it predates the current climate.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And it raises some pretty important questions, don't you think?
Yeah, for sure. Like, what led her down this path? Was there a specific event? Was it a gradual shift?
Right. Like, what were the roots of all of this? So let's rewind a bit. Let's delve into her background. We know that she got her medical license way back in 1984
1984, okay.
and has been practicing for decades.
That's a significant detail. And it's also worth noting that she's an osteopathic physician.
Right.
Which, while it's a legitimate branch of medicine, it sometimes attracts individuals who lean towards alternative approaches.
Okay. So could her background in osteopathy, with its emphasis on holistic healing, have played a role maybe in shaping her views?
It's definitely a possibility. I mean, think of it this way. Osteopathy often focuses on the interconnectedness of the body's systems,
Right.
which is a valid approach, but it can sometimes attract those who are more open to, let's say, less scientifically supported practices.
Interesting. So, all right, let's fast forward then to her anti-vaccine activism. One of the earliest instances of this was her book, Saying No to Vaccines,
Saying no to vaccines.
published in 2008.
Right.
And this book kind of became a foundational text, really, for the modern anti-vaccine movement. And it's where she lays out many of her core arguments, which she continues to promote, to this day.
Interesting.
And she didn't stop at just writing a book, did she?
No, she seems very active.
This is where this grifter or gifted question starts to get really fascinating.
Okay, I'm listening.
She essentially built a whole empire around her anti-vaccine stance. Books, online courses, even a vaccine-injured consulting service.
Wow, a whole empire. That's quite something. So, where do we go from here?
Well, that's where the lines can start to blur, right? On the surface, it seems like she's offering guidance and support.
To people who are questioning vaccines.
Exactly.
Okay, I get that.
But then if you look closer, you see a business model. And it's built around sowing fear and doubt and potentially profiting from people's anxieties.
I see.
Her courses, for instance, can cost hundreds, even thousands of dollars.
Okay, so there's real money involved here.
Real money. Big money. And it's not like she's operating in a small niche market either.
No, I imagine she's reaching quite a lot of people with these views.
Reports indicate she has a massive online following, potentially reaching millions across various platforms.
Wow, millions.
Absolutely. And that's where I think the alarm bells really start ringing.
Yeah, because we're talking about a platform with a huge reach.
Being used to spread misinformation.
And the impact of that misinformation, especially given the role of vaccines in preventing diseases, can be significant.
Extremely significant. Speaking of misinformation, we can't ignore that infamous Ohio hearing in 2021 where things took a pretty wild turn.
Ohio hearing, right.
She testified before Ohio state legislators and made some truly outlandish claims.
This was a big deal, wasn't it? I vaguely remember hearing about this.
It was a turning point. It brought her into the national spotlight, but unfortunately it was for promoting these scientifically unfounded ideas.
Yeah, and it sparked a lot of debate.
So for our listener, maybe needs a little refresher on this. This is where she claimed that the COVID-19 vaccines could, wait for it, magnetize people.
Ew. Magnetize people. Seriously.
She actually claimed that.
I mean, that's just, wow. What was she basing that on?
She stated that she had seen pictures of this happening, although she never provided any evidence to support her claim.
Of course not.
I can't help but chuckle a little bit, at the image of people walking around with forks and spoons stuck to them.
Yeah, it's a pretty absurd image when you think about it.
But on a serious note, this claim, it's completely baseless, right? There's no scientific evidence to support this whatsoever.
None at all. The ingredients in the approved COVID-19 vaccines simply don't possess magnetic properties.
Right, so it's a demonstrably false claim. Yet, it gained traction online and contributed to the spread of misinformation.
Yeah, that's the problem, isn't it? These things take on a life of their own online.
And the magnet claim wasn't her only foray into unfounded theories.
Oh, there's more.
Oh, yeah. She also suggested a link between the COVID-19 vaccine and 5G cellular towers, even talking about some mysterious interface.
An interface? What interface?
Right, an interface that she never defined or explained in any, scientific terms.
So just throwing out these buzzwords without any real substance behind them.
Exactly. And again, this theory, it has absolutely no scientific backing.
I mean, from a technological perspective, it's just not possible. 5G technology uses radio waves to transmit information, much like your Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. It operates on a completely different frequency range than any biological process in the human body. And it has no mechanism to interact with vaccines.
It's like they exist in entirely separate realms.
Exactly.
But these claims, as outlandish as they might seem, they contributed to a surge in online fear and conspiracy theories.
Surrounding the COVID-19 vaccines.
Exactly. And this brings us back to her business model. We talked about her courses and consulting, but she also utilizes a strategy called affiliate marketing.
Affiliate marketing. Okay, tell me more about that.
To generate revenue.
I see.
So in essence, what she's doing is she's promoting other people's products.
And what kind of products are we talking about here?
Often products that are peddling misinformation or conspiracy theories.
So she's part of a bigger network then?
Exactly.
A network that profits from this kind of content.
And she receives a commission on any sales made through her recommendations.
Wow, so it's not just about her individual beliefs then?
No, she's part of a larger network of misinformation.
Yeah.
And it's a network that profits from, well, fear and uncertainty.
Precisely. And it gets worse. She was actually identified by the Center for Countering Digital Hate, or CCDH, as one of the top spreaders of misinformation, earning her a spot in their disinformation dozen, alongside other well-known figures in the anti-vaccine movement.
The disinformation dozen. That's quite a title. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
About her true motivation.
Like, is she a true believer in what she's selling, or is she primarily driven by profit?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It's a question that has plagued many, including the Ohio State Medical Board.
The medical board.
They received over 350 complaints about Tenpenny.
350 complaints. Wow.
And they launched an investigation into her conduct.
And this is where things get even more intriguing. She initially refused to cooperate with the investigation.
Oh, really?
Called it an illegal fishing expedition. This defiance ultimately led to the suspension of her medical license.
Her license was suspended.
In August of 2023.
Wow, so there were real consequences for her actions.
The medical board saw her refusal to cooperate as a serious breach of professional conduct, which resulted in a $3,000 fine and a requirement to fully cooperate if she wanted her license reinstated.
Okay, so her license is suspended, she's fined. Seems like a pretty significant consequence.
It was. But then comes the twist. Just a few months later, in April 2024, the board voted to reinstate her license.
Wait, what? They've reinstated her license? After all that?
After all that. After spreading misinformation that could potentially put people at risk.
So she's allowed to continue practicing medicine.
She paid the fine, agreed to cooperate with the investigation, and her license was reinstated.
That's pretty surprising. So after all the controversy, the medical board essentially gave her the green light to continue practicing.
That's right. But it wasn't a unanimous decision.
It was.
The vote was 7-2, with 2 physicians voting against reinstatement. One board member who voted in favor even described it as a reluctant yes.
Wow. So even within the medical board itself, there were serious reservations about allowing her to continue practicing.
It really highlights the challenges and complexities that regulatory bodies face when dealing with misinformation. especially when it originates from within the medical community.
That's a really important point. It's not a simple issue.
No, not at all. So where does this leave Dr. Tenpenny today? What's she up to now?
Well, you might not be surprised to hear that she's continued selling her courses and promoting her anti-vaccine message.
So she's still deeply involved in the anti-vaccine movement.
Very much so.
It seems like the medical board investigation and the debunking of her claims haven't deterred her from continuing down this path.
Not at all. And in a move that further solidified her alignment with a specific political and ideological movement, she even made an appearance at a Reawaken America event.
Reawaken America. Okay.
Alongside Mike Lindell, the MyPillow CEO known for promoting various conspiracy theories.
So even after everything, she's still actively engaged in promoting her views and aligning herself with like-minded individuals. It seems like her story is far from over.
That's an understatement. Dr. Tenpenny's story is a microcosm of the larger battle against misinformation, particularly in the realm of healthcare.
And that brings us back to the core question of grifter or gifted.
Is she a visionary bravely challenging the establishment? Or a con artist exploiting fear for profit?
It's a complex question with no easy answers. We've laid out the facts, but ultimately it's up to you to decide.
Exactly. We've tried to present a balanced perspective, but it's up to each individual to weigh the evidence and come to their own conclusions.
What struck you most about her story?
Yeah, what resonated with you?
How does her case make you think differently about the way information is spread and consumed in our current world?
These are important questions to consider, especially as we navigate this increasingly complex information landscape.
And here's a final thought-provoking question to leave you with. If even a medical board can't definitively categorize someone as a grifter or gifted, how can we as individuals learn to discern truth from fiction?
Especially in a world where both are so readily available.
And amplified through the power of the internet.
It's a challenge we all face.
And it's one that requires constant vigilance.
Critical thinking.
And a healthy dose of skepticism.
Absolutely. It's fascinating. You know how she's managed to cultivate such a dedicated following?
Yeah, it really is.
On one hand, you've got a licensed physician who's written books.
Right.
Clearly resonates with a segment of the population.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, her claims about vaccines have been repeatedly debunked by, scientific evidence.
So how do we reconcile these seemingly contradictory aspects?
It's a puzzle for sure.
It really is.
And I think it speaks to a larger issue that we're all grappling with today.
What's that?
How do we discern truth from fiction, especially when it's coming from someone with credentials?
And a platform.
Exactly.
Dr. Tenpenny's story is like a case study, almost.
Yeah, I agree.
In the challenges of navigating this information landscape, in the digital age.
Precisely. And it's almost as if she's playing on people's distrust of authority.
Oh, yeah.
Tapping into this pre-existing sentiment of big pharma and the government trying to, control us.
Oh, absolutely.
Positioning herself as the lone voice of reason, right?
Yeah.
Fighting against a powerful and corrupt system.
That outsider fighting the system narrative.
Oh, it's powerful.
It is powerful, especially for those who are already inclined to distrust institutions.
Yeah.
Or feel like their voices aren't being heard.
And it can be incredibly lucrative.
Oh, yeah.
Remember, she's built a business around this.
Right.
And a significant part of her income comes from driving traffic
to
other peddlers of misinformation
through
affiliate marketing.
Right. We touched on that earlier. Yeah. So she's not just profiting from her own products.
Right.
But also from boosting the sales of others who are promoting, similar questionable ideas.
That CCDH report really highlighted how she's part of this broader network of misinformation.
And it's a network that benefits financially.
From keeping people in a state of fear and doubt.
Exactly. And that network has real-world consequences.
Consequences that extend far beyond individual beliefs.
Oh, absolutely.
When people choose not to vaccinate themselves or their children based on, unfounded fears, it can lead to outbreaks of preventable diseases.
Right.
And those outbreaks can overwhelm healthcare systems.
Tragically, even result in death.
Which makes the medical board's decision to reinstate her license all the more perplexing.
I mean, how could someone who so blatantly disregarded scientific evidence and spread potentially harmful misinformation be allowed to continue practicing medicine?
It's a question that many people are asking, and it highlights the struggle that regulatory bodies face,
What struggle?
Balancing the right to free speech with the responsibility to protect the public from harm.
Yeah, where do you draw the line? When someone's speech could potentially have life-threatening consequences?
It's a tough question.
It really is.
One that we as a society are still grappling with.
Yeah, I agree.
The internet has amplified the speed and reach of information, both accurate and inaccurate,
Right?
and we're still figuring out how to navigate this new reality.
We are. We really are.
Dr. Tenpenny's case is like a stark warning sign,
Oh, yeah.
reminding us that we can't just passively consume information.
No, we can't.
We have a responsibility to be critical thinkers,
And discerning consumers.
especially when it comes to our health.
Absolutely. It's almost like we need to develop a new set of skills for the 21st century.
New skills, yeah.
A kind of information literacy
Right, I love that, information literacy.
that allows us to navigate this complex landscape of truth,
Yeah,
half-truths.
and outright falsehoods.
Right. It's not easy.
I think you've hit the nail on the head.
It's a challenge.
We need to be more discerning about what we read, watch, and listen to.
We really do.
Think about it. Who's sharing this information?
Right.
What are their credentials?
What are their motivations?
Do they have any conflicts of interest?
These are essential questions,
Essential questions to ask ourselves before accepting something as truth.
especially when it relates to our health and well-being.
Ah,
It's easy to get caught up in the emotional appeal of a narrative,
for sure.
especially one that plays on our fears or confirms our biases.
Right, but we need to develop that critical thinking muscle.
That ability to step back and ask, is this information reliable?
Exactly.
Is it based on evidence or just speculation and anecdotes?
And that brings us to a crucial point. Tenpenny's rise didn't happen in a vacuum.
It didn't.
No, her success is, in part, a reflection of a growing distrust of institutions
Okay.
and a susceptibility to conspiracy theories
Yeah.
that we're seeing in many parts of society.
Absolutely. She's tapped into a pre-existing sentiment.
A sentiment that's been fueled by social media algorithms
Echo chambers.
and a general sense of unease that many people feel about the complexities of the modern world.
It's fertile ground for misinformation.
Fertile ground for misinformation to take root and spread.
Oh, absolutely. It's almost as if she's providing a simplified narrative,
Yeah, like a black and white world
Yeah.
where she has the answers and everyone else is either part of the problem
Or clueless.
and that can be very appealing,
It can be.
especially in a world that feels increasingly chaotic and uncertain.
Let's not forget the way she's woven her message into existing ideological frameworks,
Ideological frameworks.
particularly those related to distrust of science
Oh, yeah.
and government overreach.
Remember that sermon she gave where she attributed the COVID-19 pandemic to satanic forces?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yes, it was a striking example of how she blends religious rhetoric
Oh, yeah.
with conspiracy theories.
Creating a narrative that resonates with a specific audience.
She essentially framed the pandemic as a spiritual battle between good and evil,
Right. Good versus evil.
with the vaccine representing a tool of control and harm
Orchestrated by,
by satanic forces.
it's a potent blend.
A potent blend of fear, distrust, and moral outrage.
And it's proven to be very effective in mobilizing certain segments of the population.
And her appearance alongside Mike Lindell at that Reawaken America event further solidified her connection to a political ideology that often views the world through a lens of conspiracy and distrust of mainstream narratives.
So she's not just an isolated figure promoting fringe ideas.
Oh, not at all.
She's become a figurehead for a movement that sees the pandemic and the response to it as part of a larger, more sinister agenda.
And that's a dangerous perspective.
It is dangerous.
Because it can lead people to reject evidence-based health recommendations.
Right.
And embrace alternative and potentially harmful treatments.
It's a reminder that misinformation doesn't just impact individuals.
Right.
It can undermine public health efforts and have ripple effects throughout society.
Exactly, and it's important to recognize the tactics that she and others like her use to spread their message.
Okay, like what?
She's very skillful in how she presents herself, using her medical credentials to lend legitimacy to her claims, even though those claims have been debunked by experts in the relevant fields.
It's a classic example of the appeal to authority fallacy,
Appeal to authority, right?
where someone's credentials are used to persuade.
Even if their claims fall outside their area of expertise.
Yeah, it's easy to be swayed by someone who appears knowledgeable and confident, especially when they're playing on our fears and anxieties.
And she doesn't just rely on her credentials. She's masterful at using emotional language and personal anecdotes to connect with her audience.
Remember that story she told about seeing a picture of a child who had become magnetic after vaccination?
Oh, yes, I remember that.
It's such a vivid image,
It is.
and it taps into a deep-seated fear that many parents have about the well-being of their children.
Exactly, but it's important to remember that anecdotes are not evidence. Just because someone tells a compelling story doesn't make it true.
And Tenpenny is a master storyteller,
Oh, for sure.
weaving narratives that resonate with her audience,
Yeah.
even if those narratives are based on misinformation.
It's a reminder that we need to be critical of not just the content of information, but also the way it's presented.
Emotional appeals
Emotional appeals.
and personal anecdotes can be very persuasive,
Very.
but they don't necessarily reflect the truth.
It all boils down to this. How do we guard ourselves against these tactics?
Yeah, how?
How do we become more discerning consumers of information?
Especially in a world where misinformation is so rampant and so easily spread.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It feels like we're constantly playing catch-up.
I know what you mean.
We debunk one piece of misinformation,
Yeah.
and then another one pops up.
It's like a hydra, you cut off one head, two more grow back.
It's exhausting,
It is.
trying to stay ahead of the curve.
And the speed at which misinformation spreads online, it's alarming.
It's scary, really.
By the time a fact check or a debunking article is published,
Yeah.
the false claim has often already reached millions of people
Millions.
and taken root in their minds.
It's like that old saying, a lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is putting on its shoes.
Exactly.
And it doesn't help that social media platforms are designed to keep us engaged
Oh, absolutely.
and outrage and fear.
Oh, they're incredibly effective engagement tools.
They are.
Those algorithms are designed to feed us content that keeps us scrolling and clicking.
Right.
And unfortunately, that often means content that triggers strong emotions.
Even when a claim is later proven false, the emotional impact can linger,
It can.
influencing our beliefs and decisions.
Absolutely. So what can we do about it?
Yeah. Is there any hope? Is there any hope of stemming this tide of misinformation?
Especially when it's coming from someone like Dr. Tenpenny
Who seems so adept at tapping into people's fears.
and weaving them into this compelling narrative.
It's not an easy task.
No, it's not.
But it's not impossible.
It's not impossible.
I think the first step is cultivating awareness,
Awareness of
both of the problem itself
Right.
and of our own vulnerability.
Because we need to be aware of our own biases.
Okay.
They can make us more susceptible to misinformation that confirms what we already believe,
Right.
even if that belief isn't grounded in evidence.
So self-awareness is key.
Self-awareness is key.
What else can we do?
We need to be much more critical of our information sources.
Okay.
Don't just passively absorb whatever pops up on your feed.
So don't just scroll.
Exactly. Ask yourself, who is sharing this information?
Okay.
What are their credentials?
Right.
What are their motivations?
Do they have a financial stake in promoting this message?
These are all critical questions to consider before accepting something as true.
So it's about developing that healthy skepticism,
Healthy skepticism.
that questioning attitude, rather than just taking things at face value.
Exactly. And be particularly wary of claims that evoke strong emotional responses.
Strong emotional responses.
Fear, anger, outrage, these are powerful motivators.
Yeah.
And they can be easily exploited to spread misinformation.
Okay, so how do we protect ourselves from that?
If something makes you feel really strongly, take a moment to pause
Plus.
and examine why you're feeling that way.
Right.
Is it because the claim is genuinely true and alarming?
Right.
Or is it because it's been packaged in a way that's designed to trigger an emotional response?
It's like taking a breath and asking yourself, what's the evidence here?
Exactly.
What are the facts and what are just opinions or emotional appeals?
That's a great way to put it.
Another crucial step is diversifying your information sources.
Diversifying, yes.
Don't rely on social media or a single news outlet for all your information.
Right.
Seek out perspectives from reputable organizations,
Okay.
scientific journals, fact-checking websites.
There are some great fact-checking websites out there, like Snopes, PolitiFact.
Factcheck.org.
Yeah, if you come across a claim that seems questionable,
Just take a few minutes.
take a few minutes and see if it's been debunked.
Fact-checking websites are an invaluable resource
Invaluable.
in the fight against misinformation.
And if you're unsure about a source,
Yeah.
don't hesitate to do a little digging.
Digging.
Look up the website,
Okay.
check the author's credentials,
Yeah.
and see what other reputable sources have to say about the topic.
It sounds like what we're really talking about here is developing a new kind of literacy.
A new kind of literacy.
Information literacy.
Information literacy. I love that.
It's not just about reading and writing anymore.
It's not.
It's about being able to navigate this complex digital world,
Yes.
evaluate information critically,
Critically.
and discern fact from fiction.
It's essential for navigating the 21st century.
It really is.
And it's something we all need to be actively cultivating.
Cultivating, yeah.
It's about being curious
Questioning.
and discern.
And recognizing that not everything we encounter online is true
Accurate.
or trustworthy.
So where does that leave us with Dr. Sherri Tenpenny?
Visionary or con artist.
We've explored her background, her claims, her business model, the impact of her actions,
Ultimately, it's up to each individual to weigh the evidence.
and reach their own conclusions,
We've tried to present a balanced perspective.
highlighting both the appeal and the dangers of her message.
What struck you most about her story?
Yeah, what resonated with you?
How does her case make you think differently about the way information is spread and consumed in our current world?
These are important questions to consider as we navigate this increasingly complex information landscape.
And here's a final thought-provoking question to leave you with.
Okay, I'm listening.
If even a medical board can't definitively categorize someone as a grifter or gifted, how can we as individuals learn to discern truth from fiction in a world where both are readily available and amplified through the power of the internet?
That's a great question to end on.
It's a challenge we all face, and it requires constant vigilance, critical thinking, and a healthy dose of skepticism.
Couldn't have said it better myself.